If you're new to the channel, make sure you hit the subscribe button to keep up to date with all my latest videos.
Well, hi guys, welcome back to Life with Gaz. I'm down here on the gimbal. I'm taking this opportunity to test out some new lights. I've got a new rig light down there that's going to be mounted on my chest, so hopefully you'll be able to see my rods better. Also treat myself to a new headlight as well. Now, it's blowing cool westerly tonight at around about 30 mile an hour gusting. It's a fairly decent tide, it's over 8 meters, so they can be bigger, they can be smaller, but fingers crossed we are going to see some fish tonight. Now I'm going to show you the little area that I've chose and why I've chose to fish here, because it looks absolutely cracking. Now, I'm not sure if you can see the tide just coming in. We're nowhere near being able to fish yet. The tide is way out there, but there's a big hole down here, and hopefully this hole down here is going to be able to hold some fish for us tonight.
So on both rigs tonight I've decided to use 3-hook flapper rigs, and I've gone for a slightly larger hook. So I've gone for 4 O's up on the top with a 2 O down on the bottom, and I'm going to fish the same style on both rods. And the bait I'm using tonight is fresh dug lugworm, and this was dug about 4 hours before the session started. Now the wind really started to pick up. It was only supposed to stay around about the 30 mile an hour mark, but turned out it had got up to about 50 mile an hour this night, and you can guess what happens on a westerly on the wall. You do get wet, and the waves just battered me all night long. I got my first bite. Now what a bite this was. There's no chance you're going to miss that. I'm surprised he didn't lift the butt of the rod up off the floor. So I struck in and felt the weight of my first fish. Now the trouble with playing a fish in seas like this is the fact that the waves can roll the fish off the hooks quite quick and easily. So you'll see that as I'm reeling the fish in, I pulse, and this is where I've got too much pressure on the fish. So instead of trying to pull him through the wave, I just let him ride it and then catch the line up. This tactic paid off. I got him all the way to the foot of the wall without an issue. You have it, a lovely 40 centimetre cod weighing in at 1 pound 10 ounces. And there's proof of how delicately he was hooked. That hook popped out as soon as he hit the deck, and that shows you what the advantage of keeping that even pressure on and trying not to force him through the waves. And as cod were a shoaling fish and I didn't have to mess around unhooking him, I just clipped the anchor back up, sent that rig straight back out to where I hooked into that cod, because if any of his mates were still there, chances are you could be into a second one. Fortunately though, that didn't work this time. If you watch out to the end of this video, I'm going to show you how I cook this fish, because I made traditional fish and chips out of him. The wind and rain became more and more relentless, and every angler on that wall didn't make it to high tide. I was pretty much the last one gone, but there was a succession of people who left within the first hour of fishing, and to be fair, you can't blame them for that. It was horrible. Now I did pick up 1 or 2 little bites throughout the rest of this session. Like I said, I didn't even make it to high tide. I made it till about half an hour before. But what happened was, every time I picked up them bites, the fish wasn't there. So it was only that cod I managed to catch tonight before I had to pack up and go home. But safe to say, now I do know for sure which bits of me suit's waterproof and which bits ain't. And here's a little bit of footage just to show you what that sea looked like from a bit of height, and this is why I had to leave. Them waves were getting just too big. So let's start filleting this cod. Now for this I've got my favourite knife, which I use for filleting pretty much every fish I have, a pair of tweezers and a chopping board, and that's all you need. And I start by taking the guts out of this fish by cutting from just between the gills all the way down to just past the vent at the back of the fish. Always as ever making sure not to pierce the guts. Then just got to rinse out the inside of the body cavity before starting to fillet the fish. And the first two cuts are from behind the pectoral fin down towards the backbone, angled up towards the head on both sides, and then I start cutting either side of the fins along the back before I can start removing those fillets. Once you're past the body cavity, then I slide the knife all the way through and just take it straight down the backbone, and that's the back half of the fillet sorted. And then I do the same to the other side as well. Now when I'm cutting the meat off of the backbone, I try and stay in contact with it the whole time to make sure I get as much meat as possible off of this fish and have as little waste as I can find. Once the tail section has been done on both sides, then I turn the fish back up and start taking the meat off from the fillet end, and all I do is cut straight down to where the pin bones are, and once I get there then I'll actually pull the fillet off, and sometimes this pulls a load of pin bones out and saves me a bit of work when it comes to using the tweezers. And once you've done this, then it's just trimming off any of the fins which have still got bones attached to them from the edges of those fillets. And of course, removing the ribs before you get started on the pin bones. Removing the pin bones can be a bit of a pain, but what I do is run my finger along that central line and you'll fill them in there, grab them with the tweezers and then pull them back out, and that generally does the job for me. At this point it's also good to mention that there are size limits on fish being taken to the sea. This is to promote healthy fish stocks and to make sure that there are fish out there for generations to come. So check with your local authorities, check on British Sea Fishing that the fish you're taking are not undersized, as this will affect their population if you start taking fish that are too small. Next I'm going to skin these fillets. So what I do is I cut into the fish's meat and then I run my knife up behind the skin and between the fillet itself, and then I just draw it back through, and this relieves the fish of all the skin. Now this can be tricky because the fish are slippery. What some people do is put the skin around a nail and we'll put a little slit in it. That is easy, but I'm not going to wreck a chopping board for one fish. And there you have a bit of skin with no meat on it and a beautiful cod fillet waiting to be prepped for cooking. Now something I always do when it comes to cod is I freeze it for at least a week, and I think that this really improves the flavour and the texture of the fish. And I do this just by wrapping it in cling film, making sure the fillets aren't touching, and then I leave it to it for that week, and then I'll give it a little go in the fryer in about a week's time. So let's get started making this fish and chips, and to start with I'm going to peel some English potatoes. Now I'm not generally too fussy about the potatoes as long as they're all the same type, and once these guys are peeled and chipped, then what I'm going to do is put them in some water. This will soak a little bit of the starch out of them whilst I make the batter. So batter, start by getting some cold water and some flour, mix them together, put about half a tablespoon of baking soda in some vinegar, and that creates the bubbles in it. Now when you create the batter, what you want to do is you want to whisk it, mix it up to a consistency you like. I like to go fairly thick on it, but it should really act just like thick water. So now once all the prep's done, let's start cooking. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cook the chips first of all on a lower heat, about 130 degrees Celsius. I'm going to dunk them in. They're going to take about 10 minutes to soften up. Now once they're done, I'm going to take them out, put them in a baking tray, leave them in the oven for a bit whilst I do the fish, heat up the oil, and then dip them chips again. If they're done, I just stab one of them with a fork. If it goes through nice and smooth, then I know they're there. Next, the fish. What you do is just dip that in that really cold batter, and I've just got that out of the fridge, and then put the fish back into that tray. Now unfortunately the basket that is in the fryer, that batter will sort of absorb into and stick around it, so what you need to do is just let that just start to cook a little bit before letting go of it to make sure that fish is free floating. And after a few minutes in the oil, what you do is just flip that fish over so you get this nice even colour all the way around it. And when it's done, I'll take it out, stick that in the oven just to let the fat drip out of it, and then I'll re-dunk them chips, and that'll get them looking lovely. You may notice I cut them fillets down a little bit. That's just to do with the length of the fryer. I couldn't stick an whole one in one go. And now the oil's on that higher heat from the fish being in there. Those chips ain't going to take long to get that lovely colour on them and that lovely crunch around the fluffy potato inside. So let's plate up with a bit of salt and vinegar, and there's your traditional fish and chips, just like that.
Well, that was a great bit of fishing and a great fish and chips to follow it. But if you like this video, make sure you hit the subscribe button down here. Check out my last fishing video over here, my playlist up there, or another catch it, cook it and eat it just here.